Hey kids, Pastor Chris here. Welcome to our first episode of RMPC's Kids Questions. You guys sent in some awesome questions last week, and I cannot wait to answer them for you. We're going to answer one or two of these questions each week as we work through them. So let's take a look at this week's kids question. This question is, how do you know when you've been saved? That's a great question. And guess what? You're not the first person to ask that question. Christians have been asking that question since the very beginning of the church. There were people who asked Jesus that question, and they asked his disciples and the apostles that same question. How do I know when I've been saved? In fact, they asked that question so often that the apostle John wrote about it in one of his letters. In the letter called 1 John, way at the end of our Bibles, he addresses that question in chapters 1 and 2, and he tells us that there are 3 ways that we can know that we've been saved. There are 3 questions we can ask, and if we answer these questions the right way, then we know that we've been saved. The questions are, what do you love? What do you believe? And what do you do? So, how are we supposed to answer those questions in order to know if we've been saved? Well, first question, what do you love? If you love Jesus more than anything else in the world, then you can know that you have been saved. Question 2, what do you believe? If you believe that Jesus is God, if you believe that he died in your place for your sins, and that he lived the perfect life you should have lived, and if you believe that he rose from the dead on the 3rd day, if you believe those things, then you can know that you have been saved. Last question, what do you do? Jesus says that people who believe in him and who are his disciples will live a certain way. They will love God, they will love their neighbors, they will serve those in need. There are lots of things in the Bible that Christians will do. And it's not that any of us are ever going to be perfect or do all of the things. But we can know we've been saved if we can look at our lives and say that over time, our lives are changing to look more and more like Jesus. So over time, over the course of our whole lives, if we're growing in our love for Jesus, if we're growing in our love for other people, if we're doing more to serve the church and to serve those in need and to tell people about Jesus, then we can be confident that we have been saved. So, how can you know that you've been saved? Well, what do you love? Do you love Jesus more than anything? What do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus is God and that he saved you? And what do you do? Does your life look more and more like Jesus over time, even though we will still all wrestle with sin? If you can answer those 3 questions in that way, then you can know that you have been saved. That is a great question, and I cannot wait to see you guys again for next week's RMPC's Kids Question.